Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody who's managed to get here today, and also to welcome those who are watching online. In addition to the people present, I think we've got over 50 people who have signed up for the online streaming so that we can disseminate this more widely. My name's Wendy Fenton, and I'm the coordinator of the Humanitarian Practice Network here at ODI. And you know, both ODI and HPN are really happy to be able to host this event together with Practical Action. Launching Emma, and here's the actual toolkit here, so you can see that. Practical Action is selling copies next door in this room over here, where we're going to be having sandwiches after the talk. So we hope that you'll join us there, and then you have the opportunity to talk to people individually. I guess I just wanted to give a brief introduction and to introduce the panelists. But Emma, as you know, is the Emergency Market Mapping Analysis Toolkit. I managed to say that without stumbling. And it was funded by USAID, OFDA, Oxfam from their internal resources, and the Waterloo Foundation. And it's been developed and piloted by these three agencies that are here today. And it's really a guidance manual, I understand, to help frontline staff do rapid assessments of market systems in the first few weeks of a crisis. And the purpose of them is to improve humanitarian response overall in this area, but specifically to look at early response planning, ensure more effective use of resources, to identify opportunities to support future recovery, and to prevent lasting damage to people's livelihoods, jobs, and businesses. And I think for the Humanitarian Practice Network, we're particularly interested in this initiative because it's another example, similarly to the LEGS, the Livestock Emergency Guidelines, to the CALP, the Cash Learning Partnership, and the Emergency Capacity Building Program, examples of where agencies have come together to combine their resources, their experience, their learning, and their knowledge for the benefit of the entire humanitarian community and the people that we're trying to serve. So I'd like to introduce the panelists here today, and each of them are going to speak for 10 to 15 minutes. I would imagine that we're going to go until roughly 1:45 or 10 to 2. They'll give their presentations, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions from both the audience here as well as those who are watching online. And then, as I said, we'll move over around 2 o'clock to the room next door, where we hope you'll stay and join us for that. So first of all, I'll start off in the order, I think, of those who are going to speak. So we have Lili Mohiddin at the end here.
Good afternoon.
And Lili's with Oxfam. She's the Emergency Food Security and Livelihoods Advisor. And Lili's worked in various emergencies around the world for Oxfam and other agencies. And then secondly, we have Mike over here to my right, Mike Albiu. And Mike is the projects manager at Practical Action. And he's worked and published in the field of pro-poor market development for 10 years. He also has many years of prior practical experience of community-based livelihoods and appropriate technology projects in Africa and South Asia. And then finally, Carrie Golder-Byrne, and she's the director of the Economic Recovery and Development Technical Unit at the IRC, International Rescue Committee. So Carrie's worked in emergencies and humanitarian response for 15 years now, and has previous experience in Bosnia, Somalia, Afghanistan, and Darfur. So now the panel is going to talk to you a bit about how the EMMA toolkit was developed, how it's now being used in the Haiti emergency response, and the plans for future development. So if I could now hand over to Lili.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes about why we felt EMMA was needed. And to do so, I'm going to tell you a bit of a story, because I feel that's probably a personal experience that might explain things clearly. In the August following the tsunami, I was sent by Oxfam to evaluate our cash programs. So off I went with my sphere guidelines and my cash guidelines, which had recently been published by Oxfam. And I landed in Colombo, and I read the chapter on evaluations and so forth. Okay, I'm going to move aside. And there were two words that struck me. It said, amongst other things, you can tell if a cash program is appropriate by whether or not the markets were integrated and competitive. Integrated and competitive, I remember thinking, how on earth do I check that? I've got no idea. I hadn't heard of those words before, and I had no idea how to actually do that. And I thought to myself, if I'm struggling now, and this is so many months after the tsunami, how on earth do our emergency teams actually manage to analyse that in the aftermath of an emergency without the assistance of an economist? So I was very lucky that my trip coincided with Leslie's trip, Leslie Adams, who was doing a piece of work for ODI at the time on, I think it was called Tsunami Learning, wasn't it? Cash learning. And I was lucky to sit in quite a few discussions with other NGOs about the cash interventions at the time. And it became very apparent to all of us that we were all very good at doing the kind of household analysis, the livelihood analysis, understanding what had happened, the impact of the tsunami on people's lives. We were gathering lots of expertise on cash programming itself, which was fantastic, but we were a bit on the weak side when it came to actually understanding markets and what happened to the markets. How did we actually know whether or not our cash interventions were appropriate? And I think a lot of us were just kind of making those decisions as we went along, feeling our way through the data. If somebody else is doing it, then it must be fine, so we can do it. So that trip really highlighted some of the problems that I think a lot of NGOs were facing. How would we know when an intervention was actually appropriate? How do we know if we gave people cash? How did we actually know if markets would actually respond without enormous amounts of inflation? And by the way, how do we know what percentage of inflation isn't appropriate? How do we know that? How can we work with markets? We all know that markets are absolutely essential to people's lives. But how can we work with them after disaster so that we can kickstart that early recovery and that smooth, seamless line into development? More sustainable early recovery, for instance. How can we do that? Donors were asking us, I say, why are you doing a cash intervention? What evidence have you got that this is going to work? Oh, well, the prices are really groovy. Look, they go up and down, and they're seasonal, and they're fantastic. So we needed credible information. We needed evidence that actually we'd done our homework, we understood what was happening, and we knew that the interventions we were choosing were going to work. We needed credibility. And of course, the important question was, how can we as NGOs, with our field staff, who are the first people to get out there, how can we analyse markets quickly without using the services of World Bank economists and the such like? So those were the problems that we were trying to address in developing Emma. And I hope we've done so. I think we have. Okay. Another example of how I think Emma has been very, very useful. That same trip, I don't know whether Leslie remembers this, but we came across a certain strip of coastline that had been obviously tsunami affected. And a number of NGOs were implementing cash for work programs. So that agency over there were paying 600 rupees a day. This lot were paying 700. This group here were paying 750 in all these neighbouring communities. The NGOs hadn't really done sufficient analysis. If they had done, they would have realised that their activities were coinciding with a very, very important normal manual labour demand, and it was the rice harvest. And because the NGOs were paying cash for work payment rates higher than the market rate, of course the normal labour markets, normal agricultural labourers, were not interested in going back to their normal jobs because they were getting twice as much or half as much working for an NGO collecting rubble. So what did the rice harvesters have to do? I mean, the rice farmers have to do? They had to go and hire machinery to harvest their rice. Emma uses seasonal calendars as one of its tools. And maybe, had we had Emma in those days, perhaps we may not have done as much harm. Perhaps we could have acknowledged the existence of normal or of available labour and allowed people to go back or to go to what they would have done normally. Mike's going to talk to you about the phases of Emma work. But I do remember clearly, once we decided to embark on this piece of work, sitting down with Panteleo Creti and trying to write out the terms of reference for the first bit of work. And I remember thinking naively that this piece of work would only take 6 months. And And that was 3 years ago. It's been quite a journey, and quite a lovely journey. And a lot of NGOs have helped us along the way, and it's been fantastic. And some of you are here today, and I'm sure we all say a big thanks to them. Around about the same time, when Mike was in the middle of the first phase of the piece of work, I had a phone call from Tony Stitt from Ofda, and he was very interested in the piece of work because I think he could see the value of the problems that we were trying to solve. And that kind of led on to a telecon with the States. And I'm sure you all can empathise. You know what it's like when you're phoning in to a meeting and everybody's there around a table drinking water or orange juice, they can see each other, and you're the only person on the phone. Have you ever had that experience? And you feel a bit of an idiot, and you don't want to heavy breathe down the phone in case you sound funny, and you can't quite hear what's going on. Well, that was my experience. It was a lovely interaction call. All the American NGOs were around the table with Jim Bishop, I think it was, and we were discussing this piece of work, and everybody kind of bought into it, saying, yeah, this is really important, we need this is definitely an area that we need to improve. We all face these problems, yes, we need this. And suddenly, Jim Bishop said, Carrie, you should be the person that leads on this work with Oxfam. And thinking back on it, that was a very seminal moment. Little did I realise that that would be the beginning of a fantastic working relationship with IRC. And since then, the two of us, the two agencies...
Who were both calling in, ironically.
You were calling in as well? Okay, right. Yeah, we've been leading on this piece of work since then. It's been a fantastic relationship, and we've enjoyed working with Practical Action as well. Really enjoyed it. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation. Those are the problems that we've tried to solve with Emma, and thank you very much.